Hello world, my name is Tim Roswick, and today we're going to talk about the easiest way to maximize player fun, and I'm just going to tell you what it is right up front, and then we're going to dive into it. The easiest way to maximize player fun is to have good UI, and that sounds boring as shit, and that's why I have a clickbait title, but it's really important. Trust me, it's very, 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 very important. So if you want to make good games, you want to make fun games, it's important that you watch this video. So I'm going to give you 5 reasons why UI is the key to fun and what makes good UI. So first of all, if you think of UI, when I say UI, what it means is user interface. It means the interface with which someone connects to the game. So you've got the game and the systems, then you've got the user, and the UI is smack dab in the middle. That's the things they click on. It's the buttons they click on. It's the keys that they press. It's the way that the system works and delivers information to the user. If you think about it, it's probably the most important thing in the entire game, because it is the translation between human language and computer language and systems language and the game language, right? So it's really, really, really important that you get this right. And I think the best way that I can explain is kind of show you my journey in UI and kind of some of the stuff that I'm thinking about and some of the stuff that I have done in let's just use Barn Battles for example, because I think it'll probably be the best example. So if you don't know, I made a game called Barn Battles for a 7-day roguelike challenge, and basically it's a tactics game, right? So what I wanted to do was I wanted to make a game that people could play that was simple. I wanted to make something deep and strategic, but I also wanted to make something simple to learn. So one of the first steps to doing that was making something that people knew how to use. So the number one rule, I think, of good UI, and I've got 5 of these, but number one rule is it should be guessable / understandable. So if you see, people take this for granted, but you see these little highlight tiles, right? It highlights everywhere my mouse goes. And when I hover over something that's interactable, it shows up. So you click. Most people, they'll go like, oh, let me click that. And then they'll see that they can move, right? Now, one of the things that I did wrong here, and this was just for the jam version, is every unit has 2 move points. One, most people miss this completely. So they'll do something like move, and then they'll try to select another unit, or they'll try to do something else, and they'll right click. And what that does is end their turn. And there was a lot of people that were confused about that. My thinking was, hey, you've only got 2 action points. If you're not going to use that action point, since you can only move 1 unit at a time, since you're not going to use that action point, you might as well just end your turn there. But what most people assume right click is to deselect. And that's what it does when you haven't moved yet. But if you move and then you right click, it ends your turn. Which leads me to the second rule, that good UI should be consistent, unlike what you're looking at. It's not consistent. Right click does 2 different things depending on the context, when it should always do the same thing as deselect. Now, let me show you the newer version of this game, because this, I think, does it a little bit better. Talking about guessable / understandable. So the way that movement works in the newer version of the game is when you click on a character, it shows you the highlight tile, but it actually moves the character with you. It moves the character with you, and it highlights him red where he cannot move. And if I click, it actually gives, there's no sound or visual cues for this yet, but if I go ahead and click, it literally says can't move there. So if I had any doubt in my head, that I could move here, it literally says I can't move there. And then when I actually highlight the green tile, you can click, and then he just automatically moves. Now, this seems simple, right? But this is like the 3rd iteration of this UI, and the reasoning being, this has to be guessable and understandable. And the best way to kind of get guessable and understandable, by the way, is to ask people what they think your UI does. So if you could just grab somebody and just be like, hey, right here, what do you think this does? What mode are you in? If I hover over this guy, what do you think this does? Right, so this is the combat stuff that we're working on right now, and I'm not sure any of this is going to be final, but for right now, the way that it works is, if you hover over something, it shows the health bar, So anything that you hover over can show a health bar, right? But if you click and you have the attack selected, which is a temporary piece of art, and you hover over something, it will show how many health they have with hearts, and then it will blink how many damage it does. So this guy only has 1 health, and it's gonna do 1 damage. So this will kill him. And someone in the stream actually brought up the fact that we should add the skull when the thing that you're attacking is gonna die, and I thought that was a good addition. So if I do that real quick, I can show you. If I move the dog, well, the dog just got decimated. Perfect example. But normally, if I move into range of these dudes, and there's some AI bugs and stuff right now, so they're hopping on top of each other. But if I do this, for example, and I hover over him, it's also going to be a bug because it's also covering the good old bush. So we're going to ignore that. The third thing about good UI is good UI is informative. So the other thing that we're noticing here is when you hover over everything, it tells you the health of every little thing in play. And I'm going to go ahead and press my button to go to the next level so I can show you some of the examples here, because when that bug happens, it makes it hard to read. So this, I am being bombarded by stuff. Okay, so if you notice, like, he's got 3 out of 5 health, you can tell by hovering over him, right? You can tell by hovering over all these things how much health they have. So it's super informative, and usually when I'm hovering over people, what I want to know is how much health they have, right? Some cases, how much damage they do. So I'm trying really hard to make the UI understandable, and then it's slightly different when you're given a different context. So if I move him here, now it shows his health, but it shows it highlighted, right? Whereas like here, it shows him 1 health. But this guy, if I actually click, is showing me that it's going to do 1 damage, whereas this guy still shows health. In the older version, I actually didn't show anything on the hover when you were in attack mode, but I thought, hey, you know, as I'm playing this game, I'm realizing that in order for this UI to be good, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be planning out strategically. Okay, I want to hit this guy, but how much health does this guy have? Okay, and this other guy does what? Okay, so the hover menu is actually super, super important. It needs to be informative. And there's a couple pieces to informative. There's the feedback and there's the error handling. So like I said, you need to be able to get feedback when you do something wrong or when you do something right. So informative is showing the health and the damage of the character, right? But it's also showing what's about to happen with your next action. So when I hover over myself, it just shows my health. When I hover this guy, it shows the health and damage. But for a bush, for example, the bushes don't attack. So it doesn't show the damage of the bushes, right? It shows the damage of the characters, and that makes sense. But all this stuff has to be programmed, right? But then when I hover over the character that I'm about to attack, it shows the sword and the skull icon, and it blinks the heart. So that's super informative. It lets people know, like, hey, it's going to give you feedback on what you're about to do. But the other side is also important. So if I go to click here, if I click in any of these places, and this is what I was talking about, the feedback, you've got the visual feedback of the slight camera zoom, which is going to get added to all the error messages. But it tells you exactly why what you're doing is wrong. So it says, no, you can't do that. It plays a little error sound, which is muted right now for the sake of this video. And it tells you why. So the feedback part of it, which is basically when the player makes an action, the game says, hey, we've received your action. Either A, you succeeded at it, or B, you can't do that, and here's why. That part is super important, but the error handling specifically, the bad stuff when they can't do an action, is super important. A lot of people will be like, oh, they'll give the right feedback for doing the action, right? Like the sound and the kickback and all that from shooting a gun, but they don't give the right stuff when they can't shoot the weapon. So like they'll go to shoot a gun and it won't fire. Well, why won't it fire? I don't know. And then some games will show you like, hey, you need to reload, right? And it'll pop up in the front of the screen and says, hey, you need to reload. Letting them know why they can't do the thing is just as important as letting them know what's going to happen when they do the thing. And finally, number 4 is good UI reduces memory load. So in older versions of the game, you had to be in a certain mode to check the health of other things. I reversed that, and it was actually kind of complicated with my whole system to figure out how to always show the health of everything and the damage of everything. And so these are kind of contextual contextual modes of like what you might want to know. And that's no matter what mode you're in, whether you're trying to attack or move or whatever, you always want to know certain information, and health would be one of those things. The other thing that we haven't added yet is health needs to be right here for your whole squad, because your whole squad kind of stacks up on the side here. So reduces memory load. One of the things that I'm constantly thinking of is, okay, what health are all my guys, right? So I'm thinking as a designer, okay, if that pops up in my head all the time, what are the health of all my guys? I need to make it easily accessible to show the health of all your dudes. Like that needs to just be there all the time. Whereas like you can check individual enemies what their health is at, but the health of your dudes is super important and it needs to be visible all the time. So that's stuff to keep in mind. The last number 5 is good UI should get out of the way. It really, really should. If you do your UI great, if you do your UI fantastic, one of the things you'll notice is it goes unnoticed. Most people were like, oh, they don't say anything about it. Good UI doesn't have any effects, because what the goal of UI is to just create an interface, right? It's to create an interface between the player and the game. So if you think about it, good UI makes that interface seamless. It makes it completely seamless. And going through all of our points, making UI that's guessable, like if I can click on this guy and it selects my actual unit, okay, I could guess that. If I click on, based on these, if I click on these, that selects the actual move. Okay, I can guess that. If I click on this and the guy follows me wherever I'm gonna move, this is a lot more understandable that I am actually selecting where this guy's gonna move, right? If I move him, and we've got all these that with little tiles above the bug there too. We've got all these X's here, but then these certain tiles are highlighted, and when I hover over them, it shows swords, a skull, and their health blinking. I can assume that I'm gonna hit these. I'm gonna attack them, right? So obviously, like my game, we've still got some issues to work out, and I'm trying my best to figure out what how these rules are applying to that. But one thing I have noticed in almost all of the games that I play is the games that frustrate me the most are the games that have hard to understand UI, or they don't show the proper information, or they're not guessable or understandable, right? I just started playing Stellaris and I had to watch a 90 minutes. I had to watch 90 minutes of a YouTube tutorial on Stellaris to figure out what the hell is going on in that game. And I like the game, I like it, but it's not guessable or understandable, and that's a problem. It's a barrier to entry, right? A lot of people, one, never start, because I haven't started for years on Stellaris specifically because of that. Two, they get discouraged and they stop. You know, I think Stellaris, for example, does a good job of keeping it consistent and informative and reducing memory load where possible, but there's a lot of stuff hidden in menus, and that's the problem with hiding stuff in a lot of deep menus, is like you need access to the important information right up front. So just make sure important critical information isn't hidden deep in the game, because you can really ruin an experience. We talk about the easiest way to maximize player fun. It's to literally get out of the way. It's to literally make the experience seamless between the player and the game. If your interface is stopping the player from having fun, you've got a problem. And that's why the best UI goes unnoticed, because the worst UI is a straight up barrier to everything that you can do in the game. So it's really, really important. And obviously this applies to startups and web apps and all this other stuff too. And it's important to understand and take note of, right? But it's really, really, really important to minimize the amount of work that a player has to do to interact with your systems in your games, right? You want to make it as seamless as possible. And you want to talk about flow, the flow state of keeping a player engaged, right? That beautiful mix of losing time in a game and kind of becoming the game, right? We all love that. Losing 6 hours in a game and waking up 6 hours later and be like, oh, I played this for 6 hours. Like, that's a cool feeling, right? And the only way you get that is if you literally get out of the way. You get out of the way. Your UI is understandable, it's consistent, it's guessable, it's informative, it reduces memory load, and if it's good, it goes unnoticed. So that's all I got for you today. I want to thank these lovely people right here. They help me keep doing what I'm doing. If you want your name on this list, you can go to patreon.com/GameDevUnderground and get lots of other cool benefits and features that help you build, finish, and launch better games. But my name is Tim Ruswick, and I want to say thank you for watching. I'll see you tomorrow in another beautiful video.